Welcome to Stranger Connections, where I celebrate wonderfully weird people and quirky stories. I'm your curious beast and host, Lisa David Olson, the practically world famous business humorist and interactive speaker. So if you haven't brought me to your group yet, what are you waiting for? And today's guest is somebody fantastic and fun, and she's fun size too. She is an entrepreneur, one of the words that I struggle to say. I want to welcome Georgia Vanderville, a TEDx speaker, a speaker coach, and a seasoned entrepreneur with 22 years of experience in the candle manufacturing industry. But today we're going beyond the product. There's a whole story about it. So this is what I call From Candles in the Kitchen to Lessons from the Ladder. Please welcome Georgia Vanderville. Yay! Do you get what
Ah,
I'm saying? Lessons from the ladder?
I love it. I love the lessons from the ladder. Those ladder lessons mean everything to us.
Yes, it's so great to have you on Stranger Connections. I know you're doing a whirlwind tour of podcasts, so thank you for taking a moment to jump into the weirdo land.
Definitely, it's the best place to be.
I know you have a great start story, and of course, let's start with that, where you were making candles in your kitchen because you needed, I think there was a boy involved, isn't there always? Let's talk about that story.
I'd been traveling in Europe, got home, only came home because I had absolutely no money left. Got home, met a boy. I asked him for a ride on his motorcycle, and he said no. And then
Oh,
and then he turned around and he looked at me and he's like, "Fine, I'll give you a ride around the block." Gave me a ride around the block,
ah,
paid for my phone number, and I said no.
ah.
Actually, I said yes. So I gave him my number, and that was right before Christmas. Christmas came, and I still didn't have any money. I made him a candle. Wasn't really in love with making candles. I just needed something to give people for Christmas. My roommates saw me making candles for them and for the boy. So they gave me wax, and I was not thrilled. I was just bummed because I felt like it was a weight on my shoulders, and it was something that was going to hold me back and stop me from traveling more. But Valentine's Day came. I was oddly still with the same boy, which had never happened before. That was a very long stretch for me. And I made him a heart-shaped candle, and I took it to work with me, showed all the guys I worked with at work because I needed a guy's opinion, and everyone freaked out. They were like, "Whoa, this is so cool." And I started making candles. One of the guys I worked with said, "Will you make me a beer scented candle?" Okay, sure. I made them this beer scented candle, and they loved it. It was seriously the grossest smelling candle ever. It was like going to a fraternity party and someone had left their beer from 2 weeks earlier, and and they had probably spit in it a few times, and like it was just bad.
A
But
butt
they
floating
loved
in
it.
it. Yeah, I can smell that right now. How did you make a beer scented candle? Was it actually with beer?
No, it was just the exact same way that you would make a regular candle. It was with fragrance.
Oh, okay. Okay. Do you
Yeah,
remember the fragrance for the motorcycle guy that was your very first
I
candle?
I do. It was pomegranate. And we actually still have that fragrance.
Oh, all right. Did you marry the motorcycle guy?
I did. Actually,
You
yes,
did.
I did. Yeah, I held him down one day with a
Ah.
candle over his head, and I was like, "I'm gonna knock you out if you don't give me a ring." So he did.
Oh, wow. I wasn't remembering that story if that was really Mr. Vanderville. Okay, we got this now. So
Yeah.
then your roommates gave you wax thinking, "Oh, she is into this. She's gonna love this." And you were like, that represented something to you, like you couldn't leave or what?
Yeah, it represented clutter. It represented weight. It was 2 pounds, like physical pounds of wax. I could not put them in my backpack and travel around with them. I couldn't do the things I wanted to do with them. So it just represented something and sat in I had a little basket and it sat in this basket in my closet for 2 months until Valentine's Day came. And it just was really a heavy thing. I'd open the closet, and for some reason, these two little blocks of wax would just stare back at me like, haha, we're here and you have nothing to do with us.
The only thing worse than 2 pounds of wax in your closet is talking wax in your closet. So I agree with that. That would be really annoying. Then how does one go from being annoyed by a block of wax in the closet to having a 3.5 million annual sales candle business called Shorties Candles?
That's a great question. Well, to go from being clutter and weight to being something that you enjoy and you love and you just are excited about, you have to recognize the beauty in it. And it took me a very, very long time to recognize the true beauty in it, but I recognized really quickly because I never thought that I would ever be able to make something that somebody else liked. Actually, so when I was 15, I we lived in this really old house and I overflowed the bathtub. And the bathtub overflowed. I soaked the carpet. The house was so old it had carpet in the bathroom. And this awful, horrendous smell came out of this carpet. Like no human should ever smell this. And I tried to figure it out, and someone told me to buy a scented candle. But I was 15 years old, and I was the one buying that scented candle. So I went to the store, spent my money on this scented candle, and we didn't have a car. Like I had to take the bus everywhere. So I got this scented candle. I put it in my room, and it did nothing. It didn't smell like anything. So I thought scented candles just didn't smell like anything. So then when I was 21 and I made this boy the candle and it had this incredible smell to it, it blew me away. And to me, I invented scented candles. I was super excited. And I just didn't, I remember sitting there one day going, what do I do with this? I just invented something. Oh my gosh. I did that. What's happening here? How did I'm like this tall, I'm like this big. I How do I invent something? And then I just kept making candles and they improved, they got better. We started selling at a farmer's market and people kept coming back. They came back week after week after week after week. The same, my very first two customers, Lisa and Leo, they still buy from us 22 years
Oh,
later. And it is
wow.
so cool to run into them. It
Did you
is
make
so
a
neat.
scent just for them yet then?
Yes, actually, I have. We don't actually carry it, but we do carry it specifically just for them. So they're the
Oh,
only people who order it. It's this old blueberry cobbler that we had years and years and years ago, but it wasn't a top seller, so we discontinued it from our line, but we keep it in stock just for them.
wow, that's so cool. Because your product goes way beyond, here's a candle. You seem to have these stories like every scent. I mean, I've known you a while, so I know every scent has a meaning and things like that. And everybody can go to shortiescandles.com. You can glance. Don't stop listening to the show, of course, but shortiescandles.com, and they ship everywhere and they do smell fantastic. So
Thanks.
then you kept growing because this has been how long? Is it 22 years?
22 years.
22
Hmm.
years. My
Yeah.
gosh. So your children know nothing except there's always candles
They
because
just know
they're under
wax.
22. So they grew up, they know what wicks are, they know how to pour, they know all the things. So then you kept growing. So now didn't you just recently move into a brand new warehouse again?
We did. We had a lot of different ups and downs and turns and bumps, but you know what? You just keep moving forward. And every time you move forward, it just gets a little bit better. And sometimes it feels like it gets a little bit worse, but you can make it better if you get creative. We had, we started in my tiny little apartment kitchen. I moved to another apartment. Then I moved in with the boy and I had his kitchen. And then I had his kitchen in one of his bedrooms. And then I had his kitchen in two of his bedrooms. And then we built a shop on our property because otherwise we only had three bedrooms. So we would have had the candles in with us too. So we built a shop on our property and we operated out of there for a long time. And we built tables that were in there. We set it up so nice. We built shelving units. We did such an incredible job in there. And I say we, but really I was just the cheerleader. I'm like, this is what I want. He's like, okay. And he's got his saws and his drills and his everything he needs. puts it all up. We operate out of there. We ended up moving into another warehouse. We were in that warehouse. It was a really large warehouse for what we needed. It was too big for what we needed, but we didn't know that because we were like, oh, we're growing so fast and we're just going to keep growing. So we need this extra space ahead of time. It was a great plan, but that was in 2008. So luckily, we'd only signed a 1-year lease.
Mm.
So at that 11-month mark, I went in and I said, would you work with me on the rents, please? And he said, no. So I said, well, here's my 30-day notice. So we
Wow.
turned it in and we had to go back. But at this point, we'd already moved to a much larger warehouse than our garage. It was 3,000 square feet compared to our garage, the shop on our property. So we ended up getting a storage unit and we ended up using the storage unit, but I became friends with the owner of the storage unit. He had a forklift and it was considered commercial property. So I didn't have to, when we had trucks delivered, I didn't have to have lift gate. We didn't have to pay for residential delivery. So we were able to negate a lot of the fees that would come along with it and try and keep our costs as low as possible. And then our employees, they just came over to the house and they worked every day on our property. And it was kind of nerve-wracking because you kind of feel really vulnerable. Like, will people want to come to my house? Is it okay to have people come to my house? And our team was amazing. And everyone did. They were like, yeah, it's cool. We'll come over. We'll work there. It's fine. They were okay with it. And I was the one who had to adjust and become okay with it. I had to put that pride away of, I can only do this if I have a gigantic warehouse. I had to put that pride away and go, you know what? We're here because of the customer. We're here because the product is incredible and the customers need it. And they're saying, hey, I need it. I need it. I need it. I need it. And I know they need it, even if they don't say it, because they keep coming back
Mm.
and they want more. And I know that it does something incredible to them and their home and the feeling that they have. And even though so many things have been so incredibly tough, because of those people that need those products, we have to keep going. It's just a mandatory thing. You can't quit on somebody, they need you. So you keep
Well, and
going.
how does that lead into what I've seen you've posted videos on and I've seen you on a ladder, and that's probably because are you even 5 feet? I don't remember. I just remember I'm sorry. What is your height?
You want to know a little something, Lisa?
Yeah.
So I will if you pull out a tape measure, I am just ever so slightly under 5 feet. But somebody once told me, I don't want to be under 5 feet. So I'll always tell people I'm 5 foot half an inch. So we'll just go with that. I'm 5 foot half an inch. I've passed the 5 foot mark. And if I have heels on, then I'm definitely past that. Every 9-year-old is taller than me, and I'm okay with it.
So I'm a pillar and you're a votive.
That was awesome.
But I know you do your talks to your
The
staff
ladder
from a
lesson.
ladder, and so that's
Mhm.
why I don't know if you named it that or I just said that, but lessons from the ladder. Tell me about that because that's way different than a lot of people run a business nowadays.
We do have our ladder lessons that we do. So what'll happen is everybody will get everybody together. And I'll do it a lot of times when I feel tension. So I'll be listening to people and I connect with all of our employees. I always do, every single employee there. We're not so big that I can't say hi to everybody in within 10 minutes. So I walk around, I talk to people, ask them how their day is going, what's going on. And if I get this feeling that someone is feeling low or somebody is kind of struggling with something, we all have stories and we can go to those stories and we can share those stories with people to help uplift them and help them see things from a different viewpoint. So I'll say, hey guys, it's time for a ladder lesson. And everybody loves it when I do ladder lessons. They sit there, they cheer, they're like, all right, let's do this. We all gather around and I'll get up on the ladder. And then they give me a word and I will tell them a story that at least has that word in there. So if someone was to give me the word duck, I'm not going to tell you about ducks. I might tell you about a time when something was thrown at me and then I ducked and then I learned this other. So I'm not going to I'm not going to tell you about a duck and what parts of it. Yeah, it has a beak. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about stories and using that word inside of that story to convey a message that people in our environment need at that moment.
That's fantastic, and I cannot think of any other places that would give people a break like that. In fact, when people bring me to their companies, I talk about incorporating different things that are way opposite of the workday. So I love that you do that. We definitely align with that. And that's how, and my tagline is a connected team is a productive team. And you are talking about that connection where you're on a different level. And in that sense, they look forward to that break from the regular day and connecting. How is she going to use this word today? They're probably going home and sharing that or doing the same thing around the table. So it goes beyond the workday. That's great.
Definitely.
Now,
I've had
how
employees come back in and tell me different, they're like, oh, remember that one time that you told this one story, da 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 da. And then I was thinking about it here at this point. And sometimes I'm like, oh wow, you remember what I said? But it's really cool how that story and that lesson at the very end, how we tie it all together with the lesson, just that spark to be able to get people going in a better direction. People will mention that later on, and it's really cool to see that. It's really an experience to see it from someone else's point of view and see how what you just shared can help somebody else.
and in the art of storytelling, that is how we remember. Think back to what we've learned about caveman days. That is it. When they were drawing on the walls and the things were happening, telling story goes on and on and on, and that person might retell it and add their own spin. I'm in the Midwest, we're gonna add a bigger fish than was originally told. That's the thing. What you're talking about is the art of storytelling and how that applies to business, and people need to do this. You also were, recently posting about a fragrance flip and a lesson you learned from the wick, and give me a shorter version of that so people can kind of ponder how they can make that their own.
A shorter version. Well, the fragrance flip is this uh, essentially, I was driving home one day. I had my son in the car and I wanted to murder him. He had gotten in trouble at school. I felt like I was in trouble from the teacher. It just was not going good. It was
Right.
driving. I don't have anywhere to throw him off a cliff, and it just, you can't do that. So
It's so
we
not
made
legal.
we got all the way home, and I was heading inside. I was going to take every single electronic item that ever had even looked at the house, and I was going to bury it in the backyard. Everything was ending.
I
And I
remember
walked in the
these
house.
days. Oh.
I walked in the house, and my husband had lit a candle, one of our candles, while I had been picking up our son. And the smell just hit me. And instantly, it was like a pattern interrupt. It was so incredible. Just, I went boop, and I just, oh, and it just stopped me instantly. And I was able, it was just enough time to help me reframe. And it was real instant. It was just maybe five, 5 seconds, but just enough to make me go, oh, wait, change. That was it. And then instead of murdering my child, which I wouldn't have done anyway, but instead of all the electronics disappearing, we sat down and we had a conversation and we made a plan, and it worked out. He didn't get in trouble for like 3 more days. It was beautiful. And we we worked out, and I call that our fragrance flip. And that's what fragrance does. It taps into our senses, to our olfactory system, and really works with us. To It's like one of our five senses. It's one of our five main senses is our sense of smell. And it creates that pattern interrupt, and it just says, you know what, let's do it slightly different. And it can be anything. It can be like, ah, or you could use fragrance to have your husband take out the trash. I mean, there's so many things you can use fragrance for.
And you're right,
And
because it's the same as when we would, maybe let's separate and count to 10. Just go to our neutral corners, count to 10, come back. For me, it's being in the garden. I love my weeding and I have dirt meditation. So I think it's a great reminder to find for you that that moment was a fragrance flip. I mean, it sounds like you needed about 50 candles, but because you didn't expect to have even that one, what a beautiful moment that your
They're
husband
strong
has no
enough, you
idea
only
that he
need one.
saved. What's that?
They're strong enough, you only need one.
But your husband had no idea that he saved your son's life that day by simply lighting a candle for the heck of it. Now it's pretty important to know. I think that's great. Well, I'm so thrilled for your business. And again, people need to go to shortiescandles.com, check it out, and also join you on Facebook because you share some of those lessons. Your videos are always great. And you always have a lesson or you just are sharing some funny moments. So I think it's really fun. But I can't let you go till I ask you to share a dare or a prank story, one you've done or had done to you, or just one of those great stories we love to share.
On the 4th of July, just a few days ago, I was walking around. My son and I, we went to do this firecracker mile, and it was a 1 mile run at the beginning of the day. We head down, we do this run, and a parade starts right after the run. So the parade is coming down, you run, you finish. Well, we're heading down, and you had to walk past, you had to go all the way down, you ran all the way down to the end, and then you had to walk back to where you parked your car. So as we're walking back, we're saying happy 4th of July. We're super excited with all the different floats and everything. And my son looks at me and he goes, I bet you just want to be on one of those floats, huh? And I said, oh, I would love it. It would be so much fun. I could just sit there and scream at everyone. And he goes, I dare you. And like 6 minutes later, yeah, 6 or 7 minutes later, I just walked up to one of the floats and I said, can I jump on? And this guy said, sure. And then he jumped off. And I was like, okay, where are you going? So I'm sitting on this float and I rode the float all the way down to the end of the parade. And I'm just waving the entire time. Happy 4th of July! Happy 4th of July! And people were kind of like, oh, just kind of sitting there watching. But it was so cool because I would sit there and I'd look at people, I'd look in their eyes and I'd say, Happy 4th of July. And you could just see them light up like they were being recognized.
Oh,
And I had like weird interactions. Some guy asked me if I compost. And I was like, no, I don't understand that. And another guy was like, hey, what's your name? I said, it's Georgia. What's yours? He said, it's Frank. I said, hi, Frank. He said, I need to come see you. I'm going to come see you tomorrow. I said, all right, buddy, see you tomorrow. And then I drove away. And at the very end, I got off and I realized that I had jumped onto a float that had a big excavation truck on the back of it. And it was called like Grateful Gardens or something like that. So I was on like a garden truck. And then I realized where the compost and apparently Frank was going to come see me tomorrow. But it was just so much fun. So when you
you have to
step into
call
the
there. You have to call that company. This is Georgia. Do I have any messages?
great idea. I'm totally going to do that.
And how did your son feel that he dared you and you did it? He never expected that, I bet.
He didn't expect it. Actually, he might have expected it. I'm not very good at not doing stuff. If someone's like, I dare you, I'm like, oh, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
But he kind of, yeah, I think he regretted saying it because he ended up sitting on like this big electrical green box for like an hour waiting for me to get back. Finally, he was like, you're back, lady. Like,
He didn't get to go with you. That's right. Oh my gosh. That's a fantastic story. Now he knows he has to say, I dare you to get us on a float.
he
Oh.
keeps telling me I'm embarrassing. He's like, you're the most embarrassing lady in the entire world.
Oh, well, he hasn't met me yet.
Yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you're doing your job, Georgia. Oh, I'm so honored to have chatted with you, Georgia Vanderville,
Thank
and
you.
people need to check out shortiescandles.com. And remember, we can only be strangers once, and I invite you to stay a weird. You can say something.
Oh, I can?
Yeah, you say
Okay,
goodbye
sounds good.
too.
I will stay weird. Yes. You can say something. See, I'm just weird. I'm like the awkward one in the corner.
So embarrassing. Ah.